Nkem sat on the living room couch, scrolling through her phone while Ada played with her toys on the carpet. It was a quiet Saturday morning, the kind she cherished most. Just her daughter and the stillness of home. Chike had left early, as he often did, for yet another business meeting. She had grown used to his absence on weekends, though a part of her still wondered why he was so busy lately. Her phone buzzed, interrupting her thoughts. It was an anonymous message. "Do you know what your husband does behind you? Ask him about the house in Ikoyi." Nkem's heart skipped a beat. She reread the message, the words blurring as her mind raced. Who could have sent this? What house in Ikoyi? Chike had never mentioned anything about a house. She stared at the screen, torn between disbelief and suspicion. Chike wasn't perfect, but he wasn't the type to keep something significant as a house. Was he? The message refused to leave her mind. That night, after Ada was asleep and Chike was still out, she went to their bedroom and began searching. She didn't know what she was looking for, but her instinct wouldn't let her rest. Opening the drawer by Chike's bedside, deep down inside the drawer, she found it. A delivery slip from a high-end boutique. It was dated a few months ago, and the recipient's name was unfamiliar, Amaka Umadi. But what truly caught her attention was the address, Ikoyi. Her hands trembled as she held the paper. This wasn't a coincidence. The next morning, Nkem dropped Ada off at her mother's house, claiming she needed to run some errands. She drove to Ikoyi, her heart pounding with every turn. The address on the delivery slip led her to a gated house on a quiet, upscale street. She parked a few houses away and walked towards the gate. Her mind raced with questions. Was Chike hiding another family? Was this just a misunderstanding? Her finger hovered over the buzzer. Before she could press it, a housekeeper answered the gate, looking at her curiously. "Good morning, ma," Nkem said, her voice steady, despite the storm in her chest. "I'm here to see Amaka Umadi." The housekeeper hesitated, then opened the gate. "Please come in," she said. Nkem stepped into the compound, her eyes scanning the luxurious garden. The sleek car parked in the driveway, the car she recognized immediately, Chike's car. Her breath caught in her throat. Before she could process what was happening, the front door opened. A tall, elegant woman stepped out, holding a toddler on her hip. Two older boys, around 6 and 8 years old, trailed behind her. The resemblance was unmistakable. They had Chike's eyes. The woman froze when she saw Nkem, and then, as if recovering from the shock, she gave a polite smile. "You must be Nkem," she said calmly. Nkem blinked, her voice caught in her throat. "And you must be Amaka." Behind Amaka, Chike appeared in the doorway. His face went pale the moment he saw Nkem standing there. "Nkem," he stammered, stepping forward. "What are you doing here?" Nkem's eyes burned with fury. "What am I doing here? What are you doing here, Chike? Who are these children?" Amaka stepped aside, letting Chike bear the weight of the confrontation. "They are my sons," Chike admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "Amaka's children. Our children." Nkem staggered back, as though she had been struck. "You have 3 children with her?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "While still married to me?" Chike looked away, unable to meet her eyes. "I can explain," he began, but Nkem cut him off. "Explain what? That you've been living a double life? That you've been lying to me for years?" Amaka sighed. "Maybe it's time you told her the truth, Chike," she said, her tone sharp. Nkem's heart pounded as Chike finally spoke. "Amaka and I were together long before I met you," he confessed. "She is the reason I am the rich man I am today. We fell in love years ago, but my parents didn't approve of her because she's an Osu." Nkem froze. "What?" They forbade me from marrying her, Chike continued, his voice thick with regrets. They said it would bring shame to the family. They pressured me until I gave in. That's when I met you. You were everything they wanted. Perfect, respectable, from a good family, I thought. I thought I could make it work. Kem felt as though the ground was slipping from beneath her feet. You thought you could make it work? She repeated, her voice rising. So you married me while keeping her on the side. You had children with her while building a life with me. I didn't want to lose her, Chike admitted. But I didn't want to disappoint my parents. I thought I could have both. You thought you could lie to me for the rest of my life? Nkem snapped. Nkem felt the walls closing in around her. Everything she thought she knew about her husband, her marriage, her life, was a lie. She stood in the lavish house, her mind spinning with questions, betrayal and anger. Her next move could change everything, but for now, all she could feel was the weight of the truth pressing down on her. You mean to tell me, she said slowly, her voice shaking, that this woman not only gave you 3 sons, but also built the foundation for your so-called success, and you thought you could hide her like a dirty secret while parading me as your perfect wife. Okay, it's not like that, Chike said, his voice bleeding. Amaka scoffed, bouncing the baby on her hip. Oh, it's exactly like that, she said, her eyes fixed on Nkem. He let his parents dictate his life. He let them tear us apart. Even after everything I did for him, all the sacrifices I made. Don't act like you're blameless, Amaka, Chike snapped, his guilt turning into frustration. You agreed to this whole arrangement. You stayed in the shadows because you knew. I stayed because I loved you, Chike. Amaka's voice cracked, and the baby began to fuzz. She adjusted him on her hips, taking a deep breath. I thought one day you'll find the courage to choose me, but I see now that courage isn't something you have. Nkem's throat burned, but she forced herself to speak. You mean you have been lying to me all these years, Chike? You mean to tell me I was a means to an end? Chike hesitated, and in that silence, Nkem had her answer. Amaka sat on the armrest of the chair, her 3 sons hovering near her like sentinels. Her gaze met Nkem's, calming but unyielding. You should know how deep this goes, Amaka said. Chike wasn't always the man you know. When I met him, he was struggling to make ends meet. No job, no money, no family support. But he had ideas, brilliant ones, and I believed in him. I used the little money I had to fund his first business. I called in favors, got him his first clients. I was there through every sleepless night, every failure, every success. Kem swallowed hard, her stomach cunning. But when it was time to marry, Amaka continued, her voice bitter, his parents stepped in. They told him an Osu like me could never be part of their family. They said it would tarnish their family image. Chike flinched at her words, but he didn't interrupt. I begged him to stand up for us, Amaka said, her voice breaking. But he chose their approval over me. He married you to please them, but he never stopped loving me or being there for me and the boys. He couldn't let go, and neither could I. Nkem clenched her fist, anger boiling in her chest. So you stayed in the background and allowed him to deceive me. Did you ever think about what that would do to me? Amaka's gaze didn't waver. I didn't want this, she said, but I wasn't going to walk away from the man I built, the only man I have ever loved, the man who is the father of my sons. Nkem, Chike said, stepping closer. I didn't plan for this to happen. I love you and Ada, and I love our family. But I also love Amaka. I've been torn for years trying to keep everyone happy. I made mistakes, but I never wanted to hurt you. Love? Nkem spat, her voice thick with emotions. You don't know the meaning of that word, Chike. If you loved me, you wouldn't have lied to me. If you loved her, you wouldn't have let your parents dictate your life. Chike reached out to her, his eyes desperate. Please, Nkem, let's figure this out. I'll do whatever it takes to make things right. But Nkem stepped back, her mind racing. How could he possibly make this right? How could she ever trust him again? Amaka stood, placing the baby in a nearby pen. You don't have to decide now, she said, addressing Nkem. But you should know this. I'm done hiding. I've given too much of myself to this man to keep pretending I don't exist. I have strange thoughts to think about, and they deserve for the world to know them. Nkem's eyes burned with unshed tears. And my daughter, she said, her voice low. What does Ada deserve, Amaka? To grow up in a broken home because of your affair? This wasn't just an affair, Amaka replied, her tone sharp. This was a life stolen and rewritten by tradition and cowardice. If you want someone to blame, blame him. She pointed at Chike, her expression fierce. Chike buried his face in his hands, the weight of his choices finally catching up to him. He came turned to leave, her thoughts a whirlwind of pain, anger and betrayal. But one thing was clear, this wasn't over. Not yet. The drive back to her house was a blur. Nkem barely remembered how she navigated the bustling Lagos streets, her mind spiraling with thoughts she couldn't contain. Every moment replayed itself in vivid detail. The anonymous text, the delivery slip, the house, the three boys who shared her husband's eyes, and Amaka, bold, unapologetic, staking her claim as though she had every right to it. Nkem parked the car in front of her mother's house and sat there for what felt like an eternity. Her home, once her sanctuary. She thought of Ada, her bright-eyed daughter who adored her father, blissfully, unaware of the storm brewing around her. When she finally stepped inside, Ada ran to her with her usual cheer. Mommy, 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 look at what I drew. Nkem forced a smile and scooped her daughter into her arms. It's beautiful, Ada, she said, her voice softer than usual. But even as she held her daughter close, she knew that everything was about to change. She picked her up, thanked her mother, and went back to her house. That evening, Chike came home earlier than usual. His face was drawn, his usual confidence replaced by an air of unease. Nkem waited for him in the living room, her arms crossed. We need to talk, she said as soon as he walked in. Chike nodded, dropping his keys on the table. I know. Good, Nkem said, because I've spent the whole day wondering how you've been able to lie to me successfully for so many years without me finding out. I've spent the day trying to understand how you could build a life with me while raising another family in secret. Chike sighed and sat across from her. I never wanted it to be like this, Nkem. Then, why was it? She snapped, her voice sharp. Why couldn't you tell me the truth? Why did you marry me if you were so in love with her? Chike hesitated, his gaze fixed on the floor. Because I thought it was the right thing to do, he said finally. My parents wouldn't accept Amaka. They made it clear that marrying her would destroy our family image. And I was so weak. I gave in to their pressure. So you used me, Nkem said, her voice trembling. You married me to appease them while keeping her in the background. Did you ever love me, Chike? Or was I just your ticket to their approval? I did love you, Chike said, his voice pleading. I still do, but my love for Amaka never went away. I tried to let her go, but I couldn't. Nkem shook her head, tears streaming down her face. Do you even hear yourself? You wanted to have it all. You wanted me, her, your parents' approval, and your secret family, and you thought you could keep it hidden forever. I was wrong, Chike admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. I know I was wrong. Do you know what hurts the most? Nkem said, her voice breaking. It's not just the lies. It's the fact that she made you the man you are today. Amaka built your success, and yet you let your parents discard her like she was nothing. And she paused, swallowing hard, I gave you my heart, my loyalty, my daughter, and you gave me nothing but lies, Chike. Chike's face crumpled. Nkem, please. I know I've hurt you, but I can't fix this. I'll do whatever it takes to make things right. Make things right? Nkem laughed bitterly. How do you make things right when the foundation of our marriage is a lie? How do you fix something this broken? Chike reached for her hand, but she pulled away. Please, Nkem, he said, don't give up on us. I'll cut ties with Amaka if that's what it takes. I'll be the husband you deserve. Nkem stared at him, her heart breaking all over again. Cut ties with her? She repeated. You have 3 sons with her, Chike. 3. How do you cut ties with your own children? How do you expect me to believe you choose to stay with me, who has a daughter for you, over a woman who has 3 sons for you? That's impossible.
Later that night, as Nkem lay awake, her mind wandered back to Amaka's words. I didn't want to share him, but he made his choice, and I had to live with it. Now it's your turn to decide what you want. Amaka wasn't just a mistress. She was a partner Chike had abandoned, a woman who had sacrificed for him and been cast aside because of outdated traditions. She hadn't asked for this life any more than Nkem had. But what infuriated Nkem the most was that Amaka had accepted it. She had agreed to live in Chike's shadow, to be his secret, all for the sake of love. And now, that same love had scattered Nkem's world. The next morning, Nkem knew what she had to do. She packed a small bag for herself and Ada, her hands steady despite the turmoil in her heart. When Chike woke up and saw her by the door, his face fell. Nkem, what are you doing? I need space, she said firmly. To think, to breathe, to figure out what's best for me and Ada. Chike stepped forward, panic in his eyes. Please don't leave. We can walk through this. I will do whatever it takes. Nkem shook her head. You should have thought of that years ago, Chike. Before the lies. Before Amaka. Before all of this. She picked up Ada, who was still sleepy, but clung to her mother without questions. I'll call you when I'm ready to talk, Nkem said. And with that, she walked out, leaving Chike standing alone in the doorway. As Nkem drove away, she felt the weight of her decision settle on her shoulders. She didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain. She couldn't keep living a lie. Nkem spent the next week at her mother's house, the familiar environment offering her a semblance of peace. Ada played happily with her cousins, blissfully unaware of the tension between her parents. Nkem's mother, Mama Ejima, noticed her daughter's quiet demeanor, but didn't push for answers. She simply cooked, prayed, and sat beside Nkem in silence. Her presence a comfort, but Nkem knew she couldn't avoid Chike forever. He had called and texted every day, begged her to come home, to let them talk. Each time she ignored him, unsure if she even wanted to hear what he had to say. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Nkem sat on the veranda, her thoughts heavy. Her mother joined her, holding 2 cups of tea. Nkem, Mama Ejima said gently, I don't know what's going on between you and Chike, but whatever it is, you must find peace. No man is worth losing yourself over. Nkem nodded, her eyes misty. I just don't know how to move on, Mama. How do I trust him again? How do I stay in a marriage built on lies? Her mother placed a hand on her shoulder. Only you can answer that, my daughter. But remember, life is too short to live without joy. A few days later, Chike showed up at her mother's house unannounced. He looked exhausted. His usually impeccable appearance disheveled. Mama Ejima let him in reluctantly, her disapproval clear. Nkem met him in the living room, her expression unreadable. Nkem,
he began, his voice cracking. Please just hear me out. She nodded, folding her arms. Go ahead. I know I've hurt you in ways I can't even begin to apologize for, he said. I was a coward. I let my parents control my life, and I made choices that hurt everyone I care about. But I love you, Nkem. I love Ada. I don't want to lose you. Nkem's eyes filled with tears, but her voice remained steady. And Amaka? What about her? What about your sons? Chike's shoulders sagged. I can't abandon them, he admitted. They are my children, and Amaka has been a part of my life for so long. But I'm willing to do whatever it takes to keep you. I'll move them to another city if I have to. I'll stop, Nkem interrupted, her voice firm. Do you hear yourself, Chike? You're still trying to have it all, to keep everyone happy. But it doesn't work like that. Not anymore. Chike's face crumbled. What do you want me to do, Nkem? Tell me, and I'll do it. Nkem took a deep breath. The words she's been holding in finally came to the surface. I want my dignity, Chike. I want my freedom. I can't stay in a marriage where I'm constantly questioning your loyalty. I deserve better, and so does Ada. Chike fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. Please, Nkem, don't do this. Don't give up on us. But Nkem shook her head. This isn't about giving up, Chike. It's about choosing myself for once. You made your choice years ago, and now I'm making mine. She walked away, her heart heavy but resolute. 2 weeks later, Nkem finalized her decision to leave Chike. She moved into a smaller apartment with Ada, determined to rebuild her life on her own terms. Chike, devastated but resigned, made a decision of his own. He moved in with Amaka and their 3 sons, finally embracing the life he had hidden for so long. His parents disowned him, but for the first time, he felt free. As for Nkem, she found strength in her independence. The pain of betrayal didn't fade overnight, but with each passing day, she felt lighter. She focused on raising Ada, pouring her energy in her daughter and her career. And though her heart still bore the scars of Chike's deception, she knew she had made the right choice. In the end, life moved forward. Chike lived with the consequences of his choices, while Nkem rediscovered the woman she had once been, a woman who refused to settle for less than she deserves, a woman who refused to be numbered. And that's the end of the story, guys. Now, tell us in the comment section, do you think Nkem did the right thing by leaving Chike? Or do you blame Amaka more? Or do you blame Chike? Do not forget to give me a thumbs up and do not forget to subscribe, guys. Until next time, bye.